The air was sharp with early frost that October morning in 2024 when I heard boots crunching up the gravel path to my cabin in the Blue Ridge foothills of Virginia. I'd barely poured my coffee when my dog, Tucker, stiffened, ears pinned back, tail rigid like he sensed trouble before I did. "Get off my porch," I said, voice steady but tight, as two men in cheap jackets with stitched logos that looked official from a distance stepped through the mist. They called themselves HOA field agents, holding papers that trembled in their hands like they knew they were trespassing. One, a wiry guy named Carl, clutched a clipboard like it was a shield. The other, a stocky man named Greg, filmed with a phone, his lens darting over my door like it had committed a crime. My cabin, perched on a quiet ridge, had been my family's for 3 generations, and I wasn't about to let some self-appointed bureaucrats rewrite that story. They came at dawn, their boots grinding the path like they owned the valley. Carl read from a notice about emergency access and community standards, his voice flat, like he'd memorized it overnight. I asked who gave them the right to inspect my life. Greg, the filmer, said my occupancy was under review for noise, storage, and aesthetic discord. I laughed, sharp and bitter, and asked if my neatly stacked firewood or my grandfather's old toolbox offended their rulebook. Carl scribbled a note. Greg muttered, "Not a good fit for the neighborhood." Heat climbed my neck, but I took a breath, then another, and opened the door. Inside, the cabin held the chill like a secret. My hand brushed the smooth stock of the shotgun on the rack, a heirloom polished every autumn, carried on walks where nothing needed shooting. I lifted it, no rush, and stepped back to the threshold, resting it across my forearms like a fact. Their eyes widened. Greg's phone dipped. Carl's knees shook, gravel sliding under his boot. I didn't point the barrel. I didn't need to. "You're on private land," I said. "I'm asserting my rights." A radio squawked, but Carl couldn't answer, his lips moving without sound. I told them to show a judge's order or leave. They didn't move. Greg zoomed in, as if my doorframe was evidence. I asked again for a warrant. Carl waved a plastic badge that caught the weak light like a toy. "The board chair signed," he said, trying a smile. I laughed again, and a crow fled the pines. "Call the county," I said. "I like the county." They backed off, muttering about escalation, and climbed into a dented gray SUV with crooked HOA decals. The engine coughed twice before it caught, leaving dust hanging like a frayed curtain. I called the sheriff's office and logged a report. The dispatcher, a woman named Ellen who knew my parcel from years of boundary disputes, told me to photograph their notice. I snapped the blue tape, the misspelled compliance, and saved them in a folder labeled Ridge Dawn. I walked my property line, checking the brass markers my father had bolted to the gate, each etched with "This land is kept." Frost crunched under my boots. A squirrel chattered like I'd missed a meeting. Then I found their footprint sneaky tracks cutting through the brush to film my kitchen window. A candy wrapper lay under a rock, and I bagged it, feeling the hot pulse behind my eyes. "Steady," I whispered like a vow. By noon, they were back, bolder, with a white pickup trailing their SUV. Cones, folding tables, and a banner screaming "Community Standards Forum" blocked my trail. A woman in a navy blazer, Sheila, took the lead, megaphone in hand, preaching about unity and bylaws. Her agents, Carl and Greg, pointed at my woodpile and chimney, calling them violations for their live stream. I asked for a code section. Carl coughed and scribbled. Sheila praised their team like it was a badge. I filmed from my porch, stating my parcel number and case ID, calling it a staged show on private land. A neighbor coughed, hiding a laugh. Sheila's smile tightened. They tried to chain my gate, waving a laminated sheet titled Community Resolution. I read it aloud. No judge, no statute, just bold font pretending to be law. "Boundaries aren't a mood," I said. Sheila pushed administrative authority. A neighbor asked if it was a real order. She dodged, thanking him for supporting values. Then a new guy, Tom, rolled a skid steer toward my fence, claiming to clear combustible materials. The bucket grazed my rail, leaving a bright scrape. I pointed to the survey pin and recited my parcel's legal description. "That's damage," I said. He backed off an inch, the engine growling. I called the sheriff on speaker. Ellen confirmed no sworn credentials and sent a deputy. Sheila smiled like "county" was just a word. I set a trail cam and pinned a sign. No inspection without a warrant. The deputy, a calm man named Lucas, arrived, badge glinting like real authority. He read their papers, asked for a warrant, and got nothing. "These aren't enforceable," he said, logging the chain as interference. He told Tom to move the skid steer and warned Sheila about impersonating officers. She called it a misunderstanding. Lucas said it was a choice. He handed me a case number and advised trespass signs. I screwed them to the gate under his flashlight, the ridge watching in silence. That night, the power flickered. Tucker's ears twitched. I started the generator, its hum steadying my pulse. At the meter, I found fresh scuffs and a twisted lock. I filmed it, texting Lucas. Intruders, no warrant. Headlights climbed the Bender-rented lift, and 2 men in vests, not county. They carried bolt cutters and tape, muttering about temporary closure. I filmed, voice level, not authorized. Lucas's SUV rolled in, followed by a utility supervisor, Karen. She red-tagged the meter, citing tampering. The men froze, caught in her beam. Karen bagged a crowbar and a fuel-soaked rag by my cellar. Sheila appeared, claiming community support. Karen shut her down. Felonies don't need applause. Lucas issued citations, read a trespass notice, and told them to stay off my land. Neighbors watched, phones out, as the HOA's cones sagged in defeat. At midnight, a red dot danced on my Walla drone's laser pointer. I killed the lamp, grabbed a mirror, and caught its flicker above the porch. The bell wire chimed. Someone was at the cellar. I threw the floodlight and strobe. The drone crashed, and 2 figures bolted, leaving a crowbar and glove. I filmed the plate of a stalled pickup, the driver limping under my lens. Lucas arrived, boxing them in. Karen sniffed the rag kerosene. "This is evidence," she said, bagging it. A courier handed me an emergency hearing notice, stamped with a judge's name I didn't know. Sheila's chin lifted, smug. Lucas read it. "This is for mourning, not a seizure." I barely slept. The generators hum my only comfort. Dawn broke cold. I drove to the Nelson County Courthouse, the air thick with varnish and tension. Sheila, Carl, Greg, and their lawyer, a man named Victor with a tired tie, filed in. Karen and a fire lieutenant, Mark, sat behind me. The judge, a woman with eyes like steel, called the case. Victor argued neighborhood harmony and waved photos of straw by my fence. Mark countered, staged fuel, not a hazard. Karen detailed tampered locks and forged letterhead. I handed over my photos, the drone rotor, and a company statement about misused permits. They chained my gate, scraped my fence, and flew drones at midnight. I said, voice even. The judge read each exhibit, her pen closing doors. She denied the HOA's motion, issued a protective order barring them from my land, referred the drone and tampering to the prosecutor, and ordered power credits. Sheila tried to speak. Her lawyer stopped her. The judge warned Victor to bring real law next time, or comfortable shoes for apologies. The clerk's stamp hit like a gavel. Outside, Karen said the credit was live. Mark shook my hand. The record reads clean. Lucas promised a dust patrol. Sheila stumbled on the steps, phones catching her silence. I drove home, the ridge quiet, no cones or banners. The utility truck arrived. Karen restored power, circling the credit on my copy. "Keep your cameras," she said. I laughed, always will. I painted the fence scrape, hung the judge's order by my trespass sign, and nailed the drone's broken prop to the porch, a reminder that toys don't carry law. Tucker drank deeply, and a neighbor left biscuits with a note. "We like things honest." The ridge exhaled, its pines and frost unchanged. I coiled the cords, checked the cams, and let the quiet settle. The protective order glowed gold in the late light. Stay off the property. It read simple words, heavy as truth. This fight shouldn't have been so hard just to keep what's mine. But it taught me, paper and noise aren't law, and law only holds when you stand firm. What would you have done with a shotgun in your hands and strangers on your porch? Would you trust a badge that looks like plastic? Should neighbors have backed me sooner, or was their silence just fear? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if this hit home, and subscribe for more stories where the truth fights back.